Hey guys, Edward here from Edward279, the mixed content creator. Economies. Every country has one, but some have grown to be much bigger than others. So in this video, we'll be talking about the countries with the top 10 largest economies in the world. Now, before we start, we'll be measuring the size of a country's economy by its GDP, or gross domestic product, in US dollars. And mind you, GDP overall is not the same as GDP per capita, which instead refers to how rich a country is compared to its population. But without further ado, let's just get started. Despite the nation's low population and freezing winters that make agriculture difficult, the Canadian economy is a huge one on the world stage, although not even close to the economic titan right on their southern border, but more on them later. And despite agriculture being borderline impossible in a lot of the country, Canada makes up for it with a gigantic service sector and plenty of oil and metals such as aluminum, indium, gold, zinc, copper, niobium, and nickel, a lot of which are used extensively around the world. Never mind the nation's almost complete monopoly over the world's supply of maple syrup, as well as exporting lots of wood, which are important but not at an existential level. After all of this, it's no longer a surprise as the Canadian economy is the 10th largest worldwide, with a GDP of $2.12 trillion. Being huge, heavily populated, and absolutely perfect for economic development with its rich natural resources, Brazil is the economic giant of South America, and once you look at it from an economic standpoint, it's not hard to see why. The country is full of natural resources, and a warm climate, huge land area, and fertile soil makes it prime territory for farming some of the most ridiculously profitable crops and livestock, such as cattle, coffee, cotton, corn, soybeans, tobacco, and sugar, alongside others, and is surprisingly rich in crude oil and metal ores, never mind services such as tourism as well as foreign investment. All things considered, Brazil has the world's 9th largest economy, with a GDP of $2.13 trillion. Despite the Italian economy having been absolutely wrecked by World War II, Italy today is one of the world's strongest economies. But how, might you ask? Well, for one, the Italian economy post-World War II was soon booming after what's known as the Italian economic miracle, which was caused by a combination of a booming industrial sector and increasing openness to trading with the international market, both of which caused the nation to go from poor and war-torn to rich and recovered. However, the miracle didn't affect everywhere in Italy evenly, as while northern and central Italy rapidly industrialized and got rich, southern Italy did not, and even today remains the poorest part of the nation. The country today has the world's 8th largest economy, with a GDP of $2.19 trillion. This time on the winning side of both world wars, France's economy is still going really strong, and for some unexpected reasons. Well, kind of. Remember in my video, Top 10 Most Visited Countries, that I mentioned that France is the world's most visited country? Well, it sure pays off, as tourism is a massive sector in the French economy, and a whopping 10% of France's GDP is generated by visitors. However, France isn't just making money off tourism, as France also has a strong manufacturing sector, as well as being a big exporter of pharmaceutical products. This, however, is nothing compared to the revenue generated by the French service sector, which is dominated by tourism but also encompasses financial and insurance activities as well as real estate. The French economy is the 7th largest globally and 2nd largest in the European Union post-Brexit, with a GDP of $3.05 trillion. Despite it having been comparatively absolutely wrecked by Brexit, the UK's economy still remains one of the strongest worldwide, and unsurprisingly has been one of the strongest for a while now, especially under the Empire, with the economy having been fueled by trade with India as well as the highly lucrative trade of sugar and slaves in West Africa. Even after the empire collapsed, however, the British economy is surprisingly large, now being an economy fueled by trade and manufacturing while also specializing in banking and finance. However, similar to Italy's case, the wealth is very unevenly distributed, as the vast majority of the country's wealth is concentrated in London, with most of the UK being surprisingly poor. That said, the economic capital of London makes the British economy the world's 6th strongest, with a GDP of $3.33 trillion. Originally arguably the crown jewel of the British Empire up until its independence, India's economy is surprisingly large and is only expected to grow in the near future. With a huge population that just surpassed even China's, India's rapid economic growth is greatly fueled by a combination of two things: investments and domestic consumption. India also has a huge manufacturing sector, with labor arguably even cheaper than China's, only contributing to the country's status as a manufacturing giant. The country also focuses heavily on oil, which you'd probably never expect, but then again, oil can be found all over the world, so any country could strike it rich at some point. Those aside, the country also exports tons of iron, steel, and rice, which further fuels the Indian economy. The nation has the 5th largest economy in the world, with a GDP of $3.73 trillion. Another former Axis power that, like Italy, got absolutely f***ed during and after World War II, Japan has underwent an amazing transformation to one of the world's largest economies. This transformation from a war-torn, nuked twice, and struggling country to a modernized, rich, and thriving one was, like Italy's, caused by an economic miracle. More specifically, the Japanese economic miracle. This was made possible by a variety of factors, some of which included post-war US subsidies, increasing capital, a young, well-educated labor force, and reopening to the international market. Today, the Japanese economy specializes in manufacturing and services, particularly in the production of electronics used all over the world, and is the 4th largest economy worldwide, with a GDP of $4.23 trillion. The third and last former Axis power, which was on the losing side of both wars and got absolutely screwed both times, Germany has made an astounding recovery after World War II, which manifested in an economic miracle just like in the other two former Axis powers, which was caused by various factors, most notably an influx of foreign aid, economic policies that helped in rebuilding the German economy, the country's industrial prowess that could now be used to grow the economy instead of for war, and a young, hard-working labor force that would lead the charge to rebuild the nation. Today, Germany's economy is huge and the 3rd largest globally, with a GDP of $4.43 trillion. As one of the world's oldest countries, China has been overshadowed on the world stage for a long time. Until recently, in which the country's economy has switched from agriculture to manufacturing and services, and as such, the Chinese economy was booming and still is. Even today, it's pretty much impossible to walk around your house and not find a Made in China label at least somewhere. Which is quite the testament to how China really does live up to its reputation as the factory of the world. And to make things even better, China has a really strong monopoly on the world's supply of rare earth metals. And while that is important, it's not anywhere near as important as China's now booming industrial and service sectors. This economic boom places modern China as having the world's second largest economy, with a GDP of $17.70 trillion. But before we get to the world's largest economy, here are some honorable mentions. Russia, $1.86 trillion. Mexico, $1.81 trillion. South Korea, $1.71 trillion. Australia, $1.69 trillion. Spain, $1.58 trillion. And now, finally, we come to my homeland, the US of A, whose economy accounts for over a quarter of the world's GDP. And this big economy is so big for many advantages that, unfortunately, some other countries aren't as lucky to have, such as not being ravaged by constant wars, having boatloads of natural resources, a huge population, and stable and well-developed financial systems and institutions. All things considered, the American economy is very diverse, although the vast majority of the US's GDP is from services, which also includes insurance, real estate, finance, and professional and business services, while sectors like industry and agriculture play smaller but still important roles. Unsurprisingly, the American economy is the largest globally, with a GDP of $26.95 trillion. So there you have it, the countries with the top 10 largest economies in the world. We hope you enjoyed this video. As always, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!